Herman. I'm a counselor in Asheville, North Carolina, where I have a private practice. I'm currently accepting clients over Zoom as well as face-to-face. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I came to be a counselor, which is something clients often ask me. And there are two stories. There's the story that I can tell really easily that's pretty much devoid of any vulnerability on my part. And that story goes like this. I was really good at math and science as a kid, and I kind of breezed through school and decided I was going to be an engineer and got into engineering school and did that. And by the time I got out, I knew that I didn't want to be an engineer, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I looked around a little bit, and I had some friends that were in wilderness therapy in southern Utah, and I didn't know anything about that except that I liked southern Utah and I liked the wilderness, so I went out and did that. And I learned a lot. I had many eye-opening experiences, and I did it for almost 4 years. And then I got tired of sleeping on the ground and having an on-again, off-again social life. And so I started seeing troubled adolescents in an outpatient setting. And I had really good mentors around me all the time who encouraged me to get a master's degree in counseling. So I went and did that. And for the last 10 years, I've been a counselor. And I haven't looked back. And that's all true. But again, it's the version of the story that lacks any vulnerability from me. So I'll do my best to give myself a dose of my own medicine while also walking the fine line of self-disclosure. And so the other version of the story is that when I was 17, a close family member had what seemed to me at the time, I didn't have language for this, like a nervous breakdown. And it's still not a bad way to describe it, but that's all I knew to say. It was brought on by major life stressors and changes, and it seemed really scary at the time, but I really didn't have language for it. I was 17. I had no idea what was really going on. All I knew is that she had a visit to the ER, got on some medications, and seemed to get better. And so, like many people in that situation, I just pretended that everything was fine and tried to ignore it. And I went on and was in college and focused on that. And then when I was 21, after some changes that I noticed, but again I ignored because I didn't have the language or learning to make sense of it, the same family member had a complete manic and psychotic break. And it was terrifying. It's hard to even express the helplessness that I felt, my family felt in the face of this, having no idea how to be helpful or what to do. And it wasn't easy at any time. It went on and on. I can't even count how many hospitalizations there were, how many different medications tried, how many rounds of electroconvulsive therapy there were. And nothing seemed easy. It seemed like at every turn we were having to invent the wheel over and over again, like there was no guidance for us, for me. And that seemed impossible. It wasn't like we were the first family to go through this, but it sure seemed like there were no answers, or no easy answers anyway. Add to that the fact that my family, like many families, didn't just band together to address this. There was the branch of the family that decided to listen to the doctors and believe, yes, this is bipolar disorder, and this is what we need to do to address it. And then there was part of the family who said, no, this is not bipolar disorder. Our family doesn't have mental illness in it, and chose to blame other family members. So I got a real lesson at that time in the stigma attached to mental illness, though I didn't have language for that at the time. I just understood that people had very strong feelings one way or another, and that it really impacted the health of my family, that we couldn't be on the same page about this terrifying event that seemed to go on and on. Then after a while, there was a period of remission. There were years of remission, or relative remission. There were still lots of intense medications, ongoing therapy. But after another serious life change and stressor when I was 27 or 28, my family member committed suicide. Everybody's nightmare had come to be a reality. My nightmare had come true. And none of us knew how to make sense of it. I sure had no idea how to make sense of it. So if you think back to the first story I told, that was 1 month after I started seeing clients in the outpatient setting. And at that point, it was really a toss-up whether I was going to continue in the mental health field or not. I really agonized over it after the suicide. And it took me 2 years to decide whether I was going to get a master's in counseling and continue in this field or not. But eventually I listened to my mentors and I listened to the reality of what I was doing. And that's the path I chose to take. And then I haven't looked back in the last 10 years. So, there are 2 versions, at least, of how I came to be a counselor. So you've gotten the brief version of both. I hope that's helpful in a couple ways. One is that counselors are humans. You know, we kind of pretend to be objective all the time, but it's really our humanity that makes us able to do what we do. And so that's a little dose of the humanity that I've lived to come to where I am now. The other piece that may be helpful is to know that even if I wouldn't say that I'm in recovery myself, and I wouldn't claim to be in recovery myself, I really get how much this is life and death and how real mental illness and substance use is. I get it. I believe it down to my core. So, I'll leave it at that, and I appreciate you listening.